Welcome to Pirate Living Podcast. We are your hosts, Kristen and Karan. On this podcast, we are highlighting ordinary people living extraordinary lives. These are pirates who take small, bold actions daily to create social change. Pirate life is all about rebelling and breaking the rules for good. Creating lasting social change starts by first breaking our inner rules. After all, the hardest rules to break are your own. The pirates we highlight have dedicated themselves to creating good trouble. Today, we're sitting down with Krystal Holm. Krystal is a Feng Shui designer and clutter expert, and she is helping soul-driven women use Feng Shui the right way to create peace and prosperity in their lives. She is passionate about helping women transform their lives from a daily struggle of feeling that they're not good enough to living the life of their dreams. She is the founder of Designed Life Studio and the creator of the Designed Life Method, Mind, Body, Soul, and Home. So, Krystal, we're really excited to chat with you today.
I'm really excited to be here to chat with you.
Yeah. So you get to work with women in a unique and interesting way. We would love to hear what started you on your pirate journey and led you to where you are today.
Goodness, I feel like I was kind of always destined to be here, right? Mm-hmm. I was sort of always, even from a little girl, doing interior design stuff, right? I was rearranging my room all the time. I was playing with my Barbie dream house all the time. Mm-hmm. And I sort of was actually even introduced to the idea of energy work, even at a really young age. And so that was sort of a thing for me always. And so when I went to school to become an interior designer. And it was in my psychology class that we were asked to write a paper on something related to our field of study. And at the time, Feng Shui had been popular in the United States for 5 or 6 years. And so I'd heard of it, but I was a single mom working full-time and going to school. It's not like I had a lot of extra time to study stuff just for fun. So I actually took the opportunity in my psychology paper to dive into Feng Shui. So I kind of came into it from a really different way than most people do. And so I came into it kind of looking at it from this psychology perspective and looking at it that way. And when I was done with the paper, I really didn't feel like I knew anything more about Feng Shui than I did before I wrote the paper, but I got an A on it. So, hey, that was good. But I was intrigued and I wanted to know more and I really wanted to understand it. And because I felt like I could manifest a different life if I could just figure out how to make it work. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, I understood the law of attraction and sort of manifesting. I'd understood that for years. I'd studied it for a long time, but I hadn't mastered it, just yet. And so fast forward a few years into my career and I was working as an interior designer and I had just moved overseas. This is where the reef pirate thing happened, by the way. I had just moved overseas and I had gotten my dream job. I was working in a very high-end residential design firm and I had just started. And they had submitted a design to a client, right? Like a finished design project. And it was meant to be just reviewed and signed off and approved and sent back. And the client actually sent it back saying they couldn't accept it because the Feng Shui was all wrong. They were international clients from China. They knew Feng Shui and they wanted it fixed. And so my boss pulled us all together and was like, who can help? Like anybody. I don't know anything about Feng Shui. Like what? And I was the only person to sort of raise my hand and volunteer and say, I can fix it. and to be honest, that was like the scariest moment in life up to then at that point, because I had no idea how much the client knew about Feng Shui. My imposter syndrome really kicked in a big way because I was like, they might know more than me. I don't think I know what the fuck I'm doing. But I'm loving it. Like it was so wonderful to have this, not just create something aesthetically pleasing for someone, but also energetically in alignment with what they are trying to create. And so I found myself actually going back to school to really learn Feng Shui. So I thoroughly understood it. And I started taking on clients and helping them, and they would all get stuck in the same place. At the time, I was sort of on this healing journey of mine, I grew up in a very, very abusive household. Um, when I was 8, my parents got divorced, and my mom married a pedophile and a violently abusive alcoholic. Um, and my dad married a witch, which is why I learned all about magic and law of attraction when I was so young.
Mhm.
And I totally forgot what I was going to say now. I lost my sentence here where I was going with that. Oh, but I was on my healing journey and really trying to overcome a lot of the stuff that I grew up believing about myself.
Mhm.
And and wanting to heal my relationship with not just me, but like other people. Like I did not have healthy relationships with people. I didn't have a healthy relationship with myself. And so I was sort of on these two parallel journeys at the time. And I was working with a coach, and it was a group of women. There was like 50 of us. And so I had offered to help all of them with, let's feng shui to, we were working on healing our relationships with men specifically, and finding love, and kind of
Mhm.
working through some unhealthy history of relationships. And so I had offered to help them feng shui their place intentionally to like find love. And they all would get stuck in this same, like they couldn't declutter what they currently have, even to be able to start to design something different. And so I found myself back in the psychology studies of all of how those things relate to each other. And really diving deeply into like the feng shui and how all of this works. And I'd moved back from overseas, and I started my own company. It was sort of part-time, so I was working at the same time and had this little side hustle business that I was trying to build. And I injured myself at work. I had a life-altering injury, basically. It put me in a wheelchair and in bed rest for about 3 years before I could get surgery that I needed. And in that time, I had this epic battle, really, right? With the insurance people, right? Workman's comp insurance people don't want to pay for anything. They just want to prove that everybody is a liar.
Mhm.
And so it actually brought up a lot of stuff from my childhood. All of these things that I grew up believing, especially given the situation that I was in. I was always kind of a fighter and wouldn't tolerate the abuse that I was being subjected to. So I was always fighting back. And so I was told a lot how much I was an obligation to them, and how they would get rid of me if they could, and how much they hated me. And I felt like all of that was coming back up again, right? With this fight, like, no, you don't deserve to go to the doctor. Like, just sit over in your corner and die, was kind of how I felt like they were treating me. And so it became down to this, like me fighting for my life is what it felt like. I felt like I would never walk again if I didn't sort of take charge and do something about it. And since I was on bed rest and I didn't have a job interfering with my life anymore, it gave
Mhm.
me this great opportunity to start my own company. And I hired a coach, and, you know, started working with her. She then hired me to design her office space. And one of the things that she asked for was this yoga space um, in her office. And I was like, I should start doing that. Like that might help me. Like I can't even walk. Like I need to do something, and nobody else is going to help me. So I'm going to have to do it myself. I tried yoga for a number of years off and on. I just could never really get it to stick. And so I created this feng shui space, like on purpose to heal
Mhm.
my body. Um, and I ended up like putting my business on hold and really dedicating my time and my space to healing. And it sort of turned into like creating, like it ended up becoming my whole new method of how I work with clients and even who I work with.
Mhm.
Like everything about my work up until then even changed, like who I wanted to help and how I help them, and how I design space. Everything about it sort of changed in that healing process of um after that injury and being able to get to here where I am now. So that's sort of how that happened and how I got here.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about Feng Shui? As we're like, well, you talk about clutter as like behind me is like a million thousand things. I feel like we are a prime example of clutter. But yeah, tell us about Feng Shui.
Sure. Feng Shui is really just the it's the study of the flow of energy in your space in a nutshell. It's really, you have a relationship with your home, right? It's kind of an extension of your energetic frequency. It's the container that holds it all. Mm-hmm. And everything that you buy, everything that you own, including your space, is all a reflection of the things that you think and believe. And so Feng Shui is really studying those patterns and making adjustments to the space so that you can harness that power, I guess, is the best way of phrasing it, right? Harnessing the power of the energy of your space so that it really acts as an amplifier for what you're trying to create, right? That's the gist of it, really.
Ron, what are you trying to create in that space?
Our space is very full of plants and photos and memories. Like, we don't have a lot, as you can see, those of you not watching on YouTube, there's not a lot of like blank space on the wall. There's not any behind me, but there's like that part is full of plants, and our whole house is full of like plants and greenery. And I think when we put our house together, we wanted to feel as much like the outdoors as possible. So there's we have a ridiculous amount of plants. I'll put it that way.
It's okay.
Yeah, and lots of dark wood and greenery. That's what we wanted to create in our space. We have like vines crawling across walls and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of green in our house and a lot of things.
Well, and plants are wood energy. That's their nature is considered wood energy in Feng Shui. And that is the starting point, right? Wood is the starting point of the cycle, right? Of those 5 elements. So a lot of people tend to want plants. It's a good energy to bring into your space. The wood furniture is dead energy. It doesn't qualify as wood energy per se. But yeah, all the plants in there, yeah, I bet it feels very peaceful.
Yeah. There's usually YouTube videos of like the forest and birds and rivers playing in like every different room. Yeah.
I do something similar. Sometimes I turn on fish tanks and just music and just have YouTube playing, usually some sort of music while I work. It just lets it flow. I don't have a lot of words in the music. I just tend to listen to instrumental stuff, because otherwise I'll just put on rock concerts all day long and I won't actually get work done. But yeah, I've found that too. And I like YouTube for that as well, because I've done the nature scenes, the fish scenes, sometimes we put cats up because the cat gets them. So we put up just cat videos of music and cats sleeping. So that's
it's perfect.
It is. It really is. So yeah. But it creates an environment, and it really creates an ambience in the space that allows me to be more productive. And so that, that is sort of even down to that level of what we're talking about, designing a space. I like to call it designing a 3D vision board for the life that you're creating, really, right? And one of the things that I'm creating in my life is that peaceful space that really allows me to be expansively creative. And so I curate that intentionally in my space. And it sounds like you kind of do too. I go to Feng Shui, we get into like math and numbers and actually calculating the flow of energy in your space. Similar to like if you've ever had your astrology chart done or something like that, where they calculate the positioning. We do something similar in Feng Shui. We calculate the positioning of the home, and then the people that live in it. So it's very much a scientific approach to energy, and the flow of energy in your space. So, and then there's the artsy side of really getting it to flow so that it looks beautiful and isn't like an obvious thing, you know what I mean? So yeah.
So you talked about like with the wood energy. Are there any other underlying like, so if you want, are there any things you look at in Feng Shui, like some pillars or anything like that to build off of to get a good flow if you're going basic Feng Shui? Is there any, I don't, doesn't, all of a sudden I'm like, am I making sense with what I'm saying?
I'm not sure that I'm understanding. The basic building blocks of it is we want you to be in alignment with the space, right? Because it's sort of like a marriage, right? Your home has an energetic frequency, right? And so do you. So they sort of either mesh together or they'll be off and they'll be out of sync, right? And so then what we want to do is get them into alignment. It's very similar to, the best way I find to describe it is more like a car battery, right? Your car battery has a red post and a black post. And so if you need to charge it, the jumper cables have red and black cables, and you want to make sure that you match them up and you don't mismatch them, right? Something is very similar, right? You want to make sure that you're in alignment with your space so that it's not draining you, that it's actually empowering you and charging you up. Now, you're going to have both, right, in your space, right? You'll have both a red post and a black post, sort of areas in your space, if that makes sense. You're only going to be sort of one of those things, right? So you're going to have areas in your house that are very filling and empowering. And then there's going to be other areas of your home that are a little more draining. And so what we do is we calculate that, right? That's the stuff that we calculate with math. And then we use these Feng Shui remedies to correct them. And there's only 5 elements. Wood is one, then also fire, earth, metal, and water. So there's those 5, and they go in a cycle. And if they get out of sync, right, those are the things that get out of sync. So for example, if you've got too much wood and too much earth, you would want to remedy that with fire. Or if you have fire and metal, you want to remedy it with earth, right? So we have to provide the right element to make sure that everything is, I hate to use the word balance, but it's kind of balanced out amongst like 3 elements, not just 2, right? We're trying to create that alignment so that it's syncing up, right? And then there's your energetic frequency as well. So we're trying to get all of those things to match so that everything is in a flow state, right? Because once that energy is in a state of flow, you've probably felt it before, where everything just feels real easy, where it's just things are moving and going. And then you've probably also felt where it's like stuck, right? And it's hard. Like you'll sit there for an hour staring at the computer trying to write an email, and it's because the flow is stuck and you're in a stagnant place. And that's clutter is probably stagnating up the flow of energy in your space. And so then we just have to come through and take a look at like, what is it reflecting? What is it telling us needs to be changed so that we can get you back into the flow? Because you're in sync with that flow too, right? That flow of energy is the spark of life. It's the same energy that flows through your body. It's flowing in your space as well. But when you're out of sync with it, everything just is hard and a struggle. And so it's pretty imperative that we get in the flow just so that we're not always swimming upstream, right, with that fight. Does that answer the question that you were asking?
Yeah,
Kristen?
yeah.
All right.
You figured out what I was trying to say. Yep.
Okay.
And I have a question, and maybe this is totally not related and I'm off base here, but so when you talk about your own energetic flow as well as like those elements, is that related to the like your astrological sign? Because we talked about astrological. So like being
not
like okay.
Not exactly. Not exactly. It's I used to do astrology when I was very young, and so it's you're doing similar calculations, right? You're not calculating planets and all of that, but it does start with your birth date for sure. That sort of is your signature, right? That is your energetic signature.
Mhm.
But your home has a birth date as well, and that will determine its energetic signature. And it's not astrological signs, it's more in Feng Shui, they're referred to as trigrams, right? And so there will be different trigram spaces in the home. And then each person kind of has that as well, right? And so it's more how it relates, and it's a little bit different. It's similar but different.
Cool.
Which is probably more than you really want to know. Unless you really want to become a Feng Shui expert, it's not
Yeah.
it's not really probably something that is important in the bigger scheme of understanding
Mm.
how it works or why it's important. But yeah, it's a similar process. It just sort of like Chinese astrology is a little bit different than, I guess, traditional astrology, which is also different than Vedic astrology.
Mm.
It's a similar sort of thing, right? The calculations come from the same place, but we do them in a different formula,
Gotcha.
right? Algebra is different from geometry. It's
Mm.
similar, but different. It's the same. Same principles apply. Mhm.
So then with that, we like to ask about social rebellions. So what would you say with feng shui your social rebellion is? Or do you have something that's completely outside of that with what change you'd like to see in the world?
Oh, well, I mean, Feng Shui is kind of my method for the work that I do. But my why behind the work that I do is really about empowering women. Um, I felt very disempowered growing up, and it sort of has always been my mission to empower women. And I think as a whole, our mission is to destroy this patriarchal culture that we have going on and build something that is more just, and more equitable for everyone. Um, not not the opposite of patriarchy, like but women have to have equal power as men. People of color have to have like we have to have a different level of equity and equality. And so really that's my bigger why in why I do what I do, and even who I work with. Um, not that I'm opposed to working with men, but at this point 100% of my clients are women, right? My mission is to empower women because we change the world. I mean, even statistically speaking, we change the world. At the when we hit that 30% number, whether it's in business or country, in leadership positions, women change the world, and that's what I'm here for.
Very cool.
Mhm.
So when you're working with clients, is there some uncomfortable questions that you ask them and as part of the process?
Always.
Yeah. Can you share some
Always.
of those?
um well, it for each person their level of comfort is different, right?
Mhm.
Because we're designing, when I work with a client, we're not just designing the space that they're going to inhabit. We're designing the life that they're trying to build, right? And we're going to do it in their space. So, but we have to go through, I have a framework that I use, right? And when we talked about it a little bit, you mentioned it in the intro, like my framework, the design life method, we go through these 4 pillars: the mind, body, soul, and home pillar. I want to design a space for them that they are going to love. Most of the women that come to me, they don't like, that's not their skill set. They're very talented and very skilled at many other things, but decorating a space that inspires them is not their skill set. So we have questions around design, right? But then we also have questions around, what are your goals? What are you trying to create? What is the life that you're trying to build? What don't you like? What are you struggling with right now? Because we're the first and always, still to this day, we always start with the clutter and the decluttering process. Clutter relates to mindset, when it comes to the feng shui of space. It's also why mind is the first pillar, because we have to declutter the stuff that's keeping them stuck and struggling. And so a lot of their questions revolve around, what is keeping you stuck? Like what? And we're digging into some very personal things, because we're talking about the things that they own, and we're talking about what it's telling us. And so, sometimes we're talking about abuse. Sometimes we're talking about, injustice, or, things that have happened to them, injuries, accidents, violations. We talk about a lot of those very, very personal things to help them dig into the mental and emotional connection that the clutter is reflecting for them. So for each, we do dig very deeply into that. I can't think of a specific question. Usually they come like similar to how you're interviewing me. The questions come up as we're talking. Mostly I'll start with just asking, like intake questions of what are we designing and where are you stuck? And that's it. And that leads us down the pathway of, and then the questions always get much more personal from there, depending on where they take the conversation. So does that answer that?
Yeah.
Satisfactory. Awesome.
Yeah. So you've told us about some of the actions that you've taken, like moving overseas. So are there any other like bold actions, or even, yes, they could be small, they could be big, but any actions that you took that led you or helped you get to where you are today?
I think a lot of them, even just having the courage to say, because I could have just sat there and collected, workman's comp money and then disability, money, instead of really saying, no, I'm gonna do something different. I think deciding to even fight back and say, nope, I'm not gonna take this laying down. I'm not just gonna be the victim to your decisions. If you don't want to help me get better, that's fine. I'll create my own future, and starting this process of decluttering my own baggage, right? And taking everything that I even learned from clients, right? Because I'd never had that sort of struggle before. I'd always been really good at decluttering. But then after I hurt myself, like I was stuck in bed for close to over a year and a half, right? Where I couldn't physically do anything. Like I couldn't clean, I couldn't cook, I couldn't even take care of myself. I could barely get up and walk to the toilet and back again. And so my house was not in a condition that it normally is. And so when I had a lot of stuff that was going on in addition to that, right? That year, health wise, personal relationship wise, I had a lot of stuff going on. So I had a lot of emotional and mental clutter that was really piling up in my space. And so really after that injury, I think it was about a year after I started working with my coach, and I went to a live event that she then challenged me to do 30 days of live stream videos, right? Even just to get comfortable on camera. And what I ended up doing was trying to make it useful. I ended up decluttering my whole space in this sort of different approach to it. And that was, I think, what created or helped me create, this whole way of doing things different. Like people don't design the way I do. They design for who you are right now. I'm designing for somebody, like it's totally swimming field is going, right? It's kind of a, like, nope, don't do it that way. Everybody's doing it wrong. Like I get told that more often than not when I come on and say, oh yeah, no, everybody's doing it wrong. Like it's a bold statement. Yes, it is.
So we talk a lot on like our podcast about creating good trouble. So I'm wondering, what does good trouble mean to you? And how have you been making good trouble lately?
I do think changing the world is making good trouble. I think destroying these systems that don't work for everybody is good trouble. And I think that's my mission, to do that every day. I think every client I help to stand up for herself and her children to make a difference, to create her own economy. And it makes a different future, not just for her, but for her children, in changing the world. And so that is every day, every client, every interaction. That's my mission. And that's the what and the how of that. So.
I want to go back to like how you were talking about, you could have laid down and just been like, what, my life's done, but you chose to take your life, like to take charge, to become the hero of your story. We talk often about victim mentality, which is believing that basically the world's against you and you're the victim of the circumstances around you. And in our coaching, one of the big things we do is help people get beyond that victim mentality, which it sounds like with you, with Feng Shui, you are also helping people do that. So I guess with the question there, so it's not just a statement, what kinds of things have you noticed while you're helping women with Feng Shui? Have you had people become like set from that victim mentality to be able to where they're more empowered and like I'm feeling ready to be the hero of my story? Have you noticed shifts like that with it?
Yeah, really. That's sort of how and why I developed my framework of how I do the work, because it's not the Feng Shui alone, right? It's the process. It's the work of decluttering the old, the stuff that's the thoughts and beliefs and even the physical clutter that is keeping you in that same place, right? Being able to dive into those and dig them out. I think that is even the bigger part than just the getting into alignment energetically. I think that's probably the biggest piece is being able to do that.
I think we're slightly delayed. Sorry. Go ahead,
I've got it saying that there's something going on. Your picture's really small on the screen, so there's something with the internet.
Yeah. So Karan's going to ask a question, and to everybody listening, so we apologize for the delays.
Yeah, well, I just want to know, where can our listeners go and find out more about you? And your company's called Design Life, is that right? Correct?
Design Life Studio.
Design Life Studio. Yeah. So where can our people go and find out more about what you do?
Well, I actually, what is today? Today is Wednesday, right? Sunday, I am launching a brand new YouTube channel. So I'll be putting out new content every week to help them design a space they love, a life they love, a business they love. I'm just going to be putting out content for free for them. So they definitely going to want to follow me over there. And I think if it's okay, I have a free gift that I usually like to give to the audience when I come on. And we've kind of talked a bit about clutter. We haven't dove really deep into it, but part of my method is the Declutter Your Mindset method. That is my proprietary method for how I teach people to declutter, which is step one of my process. And so they can actually download that method for free at declutteryourmindset.com. And it's the 5-step process to really declutter what is keeping you stuck, not just the physical clutter, but the mental and emotional as well. And it'll take them through that so that they can release that once and for all. And so that it allows them to move forward. It's really a tool that they'll be able to use forever once they've mastered that, to be able to really transform not just their space, but their lives as well. It's very transformational, that particular piece there. So
do you mind sharing a little more about, like, when you say declutter your mindset, what do you do with your clients? How do you help them declutter?
Well, this is where we deeply dive into that particular method, that 5-step method. When I work with clients, we work virtually, similar to how you and I are talking right now. And so they are the ones physically doing the work in their space, which really allows them to connect and really start developing this relationship with their space, which is great since it's a reflection of themselves. It allows them to really develop a relationship with themselves at the same time. And so I just teach them this 5-step process to allow them to do it on their own. But it takes them very deeply into being able to, how do I want to put that into words? Like, why do I describe this? It's like therapy without your therapist, right? In being able to just hear and understand what your clutter is telling you about where you're stuck and what's keeping you stuck there. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Are there, do you notice with people, are there any, I think you have somewhat answered this earlier, but do you notice any stories that come up with people that they need to move through as you're doing the decluttering their space and their mindset? Like, as they're noticing they're stuck, do you notice there are stories that come up, and then how do you help them move through those stories?
Sure. For the most part, they tend to be variations, but most of the people that come to me, they tend to have one of 3 types of clutter story. They're either going to be scarcity, worthiness, or obligation. And they tend to have all 3. They tend to kind of be woven together. So it's really, there's a level of discernment there to diagnose like what's what, right? But that's even really getting into like step 2 of figuring out what it is and being able to diagnose those stories. And they tend to come in layers, right? A lot of people start with scarcity first. It is a very normal spot. I think that tends to be the what's the right word that I want? Not the most common, but the most prevalent, right? I think we have more of it than anything else, which is why that's where we start. And then as we work through the others, it just tends to kind of be almost like a spiral staircase, right? Like an upward spiral staircase, because you'll find that you might declutter some scarcity and some worthiness and then some obligation, and then you might find yourself in a whole new layer of scarcity and worthiness. And so it's like new level, new devil, right? You're going to get to an up-leveled version of you. And now something that wasn't clutter before is going to become clutter, and you'll be able to declutter that new level, right? And it might be scarcity and it might be worthiness but you'll know once you've mastered this. That's why I call it declutter your mindset, because it's not just looking at it and saying, what is this? Oh, this is a mouse and this is clutter. I don't want it anymore. Like it's not the thing. That's the important piece is being able to diagnose it so that you can really, disconnect from it, and get moving on. And that's part of the process, being able to, but those are the most common that I see from, especially in women that are going on this entrepreneurial journey is this scarcity, worthiness, and obligation.
Can you tell us a little bit about being a reef pirate?
Yeah.
Sure. Yes. So back in 2008, right? The Great Recession happened. It actually happened a little sooner on the mainland, but I happened to be living in Hawaii at the time. And so it hit us there in 2008. And I lost my dream job. I was laid off. And so were thousands of other designers in Hawaii, which is not a very big place to have so many unemployed interior designers. And I needed a break. I took a break from all of corporate America for a couple of years, and I just went and became a scuba instructor. And I was leading scuba diving and just spending all day, every day on a boat, underwater, playing with the fish, and just sort of enjoying life. And it was a lot of fun, I have to say. Not real profitable. There's not a lot of money to, I mean, I suppose if I had owned the dive shop, it would have been a little different, but I just worked there. And so it was it was definitely a fun part of my life, but I was real broke at the time. Yeah, but I was a scuba instructor for about 3 years, and I did that in Hawaii. I would just take people diving, and yep, reef pirates. That was just what I got to do for a while. Then eventually I got, people ruined my hobby. and it became work, right? And so I missed design. I really missed it. I missed being able to do the work that I do. And so I actually came back to work as an interior designer, and that was about the same time actually that I started really working for myself. I started taking clients on the side and started building my own company. So I was frustrated with even just the design industry, and how it's like when you see something and it's just, you can't change it, and it's just frustrating to no end. And it was like that in the interior design industry. There was a lot of very cutthroat backbiting, and I think it showed a lot of the negative sides of how women are portrayed as working together. It was just all the backstabbing stuff, and there was none of the other side, the beauty of collaboration and power of women. And so it was just I think I needed that. I think I needed to become a pirate to be able to say I'm done. I'm done playing this game. I'm gonna go play in a different pool over here. And yep, I'm gonna be a pirate over here. Yep. And I never stopped. I might have stopped diving, but I never stopped being a pirate. I just was like, nope. I'm gonna go get some booty now. We need money to change the world.
Yeah. So, well, do you have any questions? Is there anything else you'd like to touch on that maybe we haven't yet, or do you have any questions for us?
Goodness, I don't know what I have to add. We've covered a whole lot of stuff. But yeah, I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay. Cool. Well, how would you recommend our listeners go about starting their own pirate life?
Oh, yeah. Do the hard things. Do the things that feel uncomfortable and that are scary, and but that you can't stop dreaming about. Like, it doesn't really matter how hard they are or how scary they are. The dream is never going to go away. And you'll die with it either still inside you or outside of you. And that's the choice that you get to make. Make it. It's worth it. It's worth it.
Do we want to ask the very last question? Because we don't have an answer for it.
I think we've worn out all the pirate jokes.
True. Well, we could ask, because you were a reef pirate. Did you learn any pirate jokes while you were a reef pirate?
Oh man, probably none that I can remember, and none that are anything that I really would want to share. Right? I spent a lot of, it's scuba diving is still a very male dominated industry. So more often than not, I was the only woman on the boat. So most of the jokes that I know are not appropriate. Not even something that I want to repeat. Is sort of is like, ugh. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Let's just let the misogyny die.
Yeah. So then, and we don't have one either. So I think we're coming to an end with our pirate jokes after 50 plus episodes. So we'll end with your advice to follow that dream, and get it outside of you. So
Right. That's what pirates do. They
Mhm.
just chase down their own treasure chest. That's
Mhm.
what your dream is. Your dream is just your own treasure chest.
Mhm.
I like that.
X marks the spot.
Yeah.
Get it.
Well, thank you for talking with us today. We had a lot of fun learning from you, a lot about Feng Shui. So a lot to
Awesome.
learn.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun to be here.